Christmas greetings, one and all. I wanted to do a little show about Gurdjieff and maybe throw a little bit of Steiner in, who knows. But this is the Holy Night's time of the year. Everybody's celebrating the Christ Mass. So maybe not because it's about Christ, many people just call it the holidays these days, but we all know that it's a sacred time. And before Christ, there were other sun kings who also celebrated their birthday at this time, for example, Mithras and such like. The names escape me now. But in this dark time of the year, a sun king is born, telling us that the sun will be returning soon. And with this sun king comes many esoteric and exoteric meanings. You know, for those that weren't in the mystery schools or initiations or initiators or being initiated, they knew something was going on. There was with these mystery schools, and that they were working with the divine in some way. Which is why I wanted to do some Gurdjieff today, from All and Everything. And he's talking about, in the quotes I'm going to be giving you, are to do with becoming an initiate, a sacred individual, which Christ was. To me, Christ was originally just Jesus, the man, but he was an initiate. And when he was baptized by John the Baptist, the Holy Spirit came down upon him and he was filled with the Christ consciousness. This is what I believe in. And I think it's something we can all attain to. By doing the Gurdjieff work, we are developing ourselves so that we can feel, hopefully, the grace of God coming in us to help us navigate our way through this life. So I wanted to do some readings from All and Everything. And this first bit is from the pages, if you've got the big book, page 797. And he's talking about, there was a terrifying cosmic event, which was to do with his endlessness and his home, the heavens, the sun absolute, were being eaten away by time. So to stop this, to stop time eating away at his home, his heavens, he created the universe, so that time was kind of distracted and went off and started eating away at the universe instead. And the universe is a series of hierarchies in a way, but it was also a harmonious development, which we are obviously living on planet Earth, which is at one of the lower ends of the universal scale that he has of the rays. Those that know of the rays and the do, re, mi, fa, so the octaves of how the universe is, and the sun absolute's at the top and Earth is down here at the bottom. But let me just do some reading. Before this terrifying cosmic event, the sacred Theomert which issued from the most holy Sun Absolute, was still in a pure state without the admixture of any extraneously caused arisings whatsoever with their own subjective properties. And when this sacred Theomert came into the spheres of those planets on which the sacred crystallizations arose, and from the results of the transformations of which higher being bodies were coated and perfected through being's apparatuses, then these latter received their presences exactly as they had to correspond to the required conditions of existence in the sphere of the most holy Sun Absolute. So just a little reminder of what Theomert is. Obviously, it's made up of the word of God, Theo, Logos, word, and in the middle, Mertma, which I believe is his way of saying about working with the divine word. And this is a little quote from All and Everything, page 138. Our sacred Theomert also, that is the prime emanation of our most holy Sun Absolute, acquires just this same lawfulness. At its prime arising and during its further actualizations gives results in accordance with it. So it's working with the laws, the two laws, the law of seven and the law of three. And the law of three is the sacred trium Masikamno, the yes, no, and neutral kind of a vibration is a simple way of putting it. wholly affirming, wholly denying, wholly reconciling, transubstantiating me for my being. And we're trying to have that level of understanding, that transubstantiation working inside us, so that we can then work with the divine. Our common Father, Creator Almighty, having then in the beginning changed the function of both these primordial sacred laws, directed the action of their forces from within the most holy Son Absolute into the space of the universe, whereupon there is attained what is called emanation of the Son Absolute, and is now called Theo Mert Melogos, or Word God, which is something we can attain to, we can hear if we attune ourselves, work upon ourselves, so that we can work with our higher selves. Our higher selves is receiving these messages, the divine word. In the process of the creation of the now existing world, the divine willpower of our endlessness participated only at the beginning. The subsequent creation went on automatically of its own accord, entirely without the participation of his own divine willpower, thanks only to these two changed fundamental primordial cosmic laws, which is why we have free will. We've been sent forth to do this because we must want to do it, we must will to do it. And the divine source helped start it all up, kick-started it, as they say these days. And the universe went off rolling along, working in hopefully a harmonious way. And then we're there on our planet Earth, far, far, far away from the Son Absolute, working under so many laws, whereas the Son Absolute works under the law of free. So there's only 3 laws there. Well, we've got loads more. I can't remember if it's the moon that's 96 or it's us. I forgot to write all that down. I should have. But we're working under a lot more laws, which is why our life is quite more chaotic than it is on the Son Absolute, where it's all working in harmony. And because the divine will has just kick-started it off, but doesn't get involved in what happens in the rollout of his these processes, we have free will to do what we want, to take part in it or not. And our mission should be to take part, to work with the divine source, to be part of the harmonious goings-ons of the planet, so that we're working with him, so that, as Gurdjieff says, we're trying to help with the sorrows of our father. Well, he is, obviously upset that time was eaten away at the Son Absolute, but he's also upset about people that don't want to work with him. And as was said in that first quote I read, let me just do a little bit of that again. So the Theo Mert Melogos came into the spheres of those planets on which the sacred crystallizations arose, and from the results of the transformations of which higher being bodies were coated and perfected through being's apparatus. This is where Gurdjieff's talking all about how we're supposed to be crystallizing ourselves in the right way, so that we can be connected with our higher being body, or become higher being bodies, so that we are working with the divine. And this is happening on other planets. Other planets are working that are closer to the Son Absolute because they're working under less laws. We're working under so many laws, and it makes it even more difficult. But we must see it as a challenge. We put ourselves here as a big challenge. We want to really work upon ourselves because we put ourselves in the most difficult positions here on this planet. We've got so much temptation to take us away from this work, so many stresses and worries to make us forget about this work. It's all like, this is why we have to put super efforts in and really want to do it and have the need and the wish, as Gurdjieff talks about very often. So it's quite difficult to fireworks. It's quite difficult to put yourself into this kind of work if you have no inclination for it. And as we're going more and more into a materialistic world, more and more people are turning away from doing spiritual work on themselves because they're being told we need to be rational and this is all superstition and make believe. Though thankfully, there is still a lot of people out there that are looking for a spiritual path and they're looking for a way to develop their soul. They have that hunger in them. Everybody has a germ of a soul, as Gurdjieff says, and it's whether they develop it or not depends on how they develop themselves. And Gurdjieff's encouraging us to work upon ourselves so that we can be part of this crystallization and develop this higher being body so we can work with the divine source. And he goes on to say, so then these latter received their presences exactly as they had to correspond to the required conditions of existence in the sphere of the most holy Son Absolute. And I wonder if that's why so many people feel so lost in this life, because they're not connecting with exactly what that last quote said, of knowing what it is they're supposed to be doing. They're being far too much caught up in material world or struggling to get by in this lunatic asylum that we live in. If we lived in a more harmonious world where we had brotherly love, Philadelphia love, and everybody was caring for each other, we would then be helping each other to work upon themselves, because we wouldn't have all the worries and concerns that we have in this world at the moment. And Gurdjieff goes on, but afterwards, when the mentioned common cosmic misfortune occurred, on account of which the sacred Theomertmologos began to issue from the most holy Son Absolute, with the admixture of subjective properties of extraneously caused arisings. Then from that time, these sacred cosmic arisings ceased to have the possibility of corresponding to the required conditions of existence in the sphere of the most holy prime source, which is kind of what's happening now. People are being led away from working upon themselves. They're not aware that they can develop themselves into a sacred cosmic higher being body. They're being distracted from it. And because of that, then they're not working with the divine source. And where does that lead? Are they developing themselves? What will happen to them? I've talked about that in other shows, about how all this working on us helps us with our next stage in our life, or our continuation, our existence after this life has ended. Will they get caught up in a reincarnation cycle and come back? I can't really comment because I'm not done it yet to know, but I'm working on myself, and hopefully you are working on yourself, and you want to work with the divine source. You want to work through a spiritual or soulful path. You want to be doing the right thing. I'm sure you won't be watching this show otherwise. You're watching this hopefully so you can help yourself with your understanding of what Gurdjieff is saying and encouraging us to do, so that we are working with the most holy Son Absolute and his endlessness. We are living in harmony with the divine source, even though it is still difficult on this planet. But if we've got that connection, things change for us. Things become, I'm going to say easier, but in some way it's like we're shown a way of getting through life that is different from when you're not connected to the divine source, or you're not following a spiritual or soulful path. I'm sure many of you have little experiences where you have synchronicities, or a friend of mine used to say revelations. You see things that remind you to stay focused, and that the gods and the angels are behind you. And these are little encouragements to us. And this is why I wanted to read this part of All and Everything. When each separate, higher perfected being body becomes an independent individual and acquires in itself its own law of sacred triamazicamno, it begins to emanate similarly to the most holy Son Absolute, but in miniature, which I'm sure many of you have come across, whether you're doing, I don't know, Kabbalah, for example. We are little versions of Adam Kadmon. We're trying to connect ourselves to the divine so that we are then being miniature versions of the divine, and then we're helping with the continuing work of the whole cosmos and all that the divine source is putting out there for us and wants us to be a part of. By working on ourselves, we're developing ourselves so that we can become little miniature his endlessnesses. We are gods, but little miniature ones. We're connecting with our higher being body so that we can then work through and with the divine source. And I think this is also something that comes a lot with working with the Christ consciousness. If you start working with the Christ consciousness, you're waking up, is I suppose one way of putting it, but I think it's you're igniting the Christ within you, in your heart. They say, you put the Christ in your heart, and then you can work like a miniature Christ. Though we're not as the Christ, but Christ wants us to work with him. Christ will be with those that call out to him. I am a strong believer in the divine source doesn't do things, or Christ doesn't do things unless you ask. All these people that say, why doesn't God do something? Well, unless you connect with the divine source, God or Christ or whatever it is that you're into, it's not going to help you. It wants recognition first, or the Christ wants us to acknowledge he's the Christ, and then he will be there for us. He's always there for everyone, but are people looking up to him or calling out to him with integrity, humility, in a way, in adoration? Yeah, we've got to make our connection. So, carrying on with Gurdjieff. Between the emanations of these sacred individuals and the atmosphere of the most holy Son Absolute, there was established a genio atria masi camnian contact, which brought on this terrifying misfortune. The results of this contact had time to change the harmonious movement of many solar systems and to produce a disharmony in the inner functioning of certain of their planets. There became separated that famous planet which exists alone in space and has quite exceptional properties called remorse of conscience. So this disharmony is kind of going on in our world as well, because we're not living close to the Sun Absolute, so we're under a lot more laws. This disharmony is part of all the laws that are affecting our world. And I was just going to go to another page about remorse of conscience. Let me just find that in my All and Everything, which is a very important part of developing ourselves, remorse of conscience. I've often kind of struggled with it myself. It is difficult to look back at yourselves and how to explain. Gurdjieff does it best, really. We're being aware of how we've kind of screwed up our lives or upset other people in the past. We don't sit there wishing how we had made it. Well, we can, because maybe we can affect it that way, in case we are caught up in a recurrent cycle. So next time we're around, we do it better, in a better way. But it's understanding how other people feel when we're horrible to them, understanding how other people feel when we're not treating them right, or the same when they do it to us. We have to ponder on this. We're trying to make ourselves impartial, indifferent, which is quite difficult to be, because we have emotions and we've been programmed to react instead of act. And reminding us that remorse of conscience really is, as Gurdjieff says here, from life is real only then when I am. Remorse for the inner and outer manifestations of my ordinary waking state, and loneliness, disappointment, satiety and the rest, but primarily to be everywhere haunted by the fear of inner emptiness. And we're trying to conquer that inner emptiness and fill it with divine source, with our higher being, with our little miniature versions of ourselves as the divine source, as little gods. Because we're trying to become these sacred individuals that can help ourselves. Obviously, first we have to develop ourselves so that then we can help others. And divine and the sacred individuals such as, the Christ or Muhammad and Ashiata Shirmash in All and Everything, the Tibetan brother Lama, who Gurdjieff talks about a lot, about how these people were sacred individuals who came to help us stay on the right path and give us advice, information, the teachings, to encourage us to stay with it, which is, you know, difficult in these times. And Gurdjieff reminds us, this cosmic law, about remorse of conscience, this cosmic law is that there proceeds within every arising, large and small, wherein in direct touch with the emanations, either of the sun absolute itself or any other sun, what is called remorse. That is a process when every part that has arisen from the results of any one holy source of the sacred triumph as he can know, as it were, revolts and criticizes the former unbecoming perceptions and the manifestations of the moment of another part of its whole, a part obtained from the results of another holy source of the same fundamental sacred cosmic law of triumph as he can know. And that's what they were, all these former unbecoming perceptions, all these former unbecoming instances that the way we reacted to things. We're teaching ourselves how to do things correctly, rightly, and in the eyes of the divine source. It's like we must remember that the divine source is looking out through us all the time. But are we connected to it? How many of you are listening to your conscience? You know, and I have these problems myself as well. We get caught up so quickly in things, we react so quickly. But the more we work on ourselves over time, the more that working will start coming out in us, and we'll stop reacting and start acting. We'll take a moment to think, what's going on here, or being aware of what's happening in front of us, or how someone's treating us, or how we're treating someone. And really, that's why I wanted to do this show just for the Christmas period, to remind us that Christ is out there to help us if we call out to him. And other sacred individuals are out there to help us. Even the wonderful Mr. Gurdjieff himself is out there to help us if we can call out to him. But this has to be done by working on ourselves and putting a lot of effort into us. I'm wearing my Monkey Magic t-shirt today. I've just realized he was a bit of a sacred individual. He knew he did a bit of naughtiness. I highly recommend Journey to the West, all about how Monkey King, his ego overtook him and he tried to take down heaven. And because of that, he was punished, and his punishment was all about helping to find, well, definitely a lot of remorse of conscience, and find the true divine within himself. So after a bit of monkey magic, thank you for watching, everyone. Blessed be to one and all. Merry Christmas. Hope you all find the Christ within, or find your divine source within you. We are all gods, little miniature ones.